Okay, it's 13 degrees Fahrenheit here outside the Alamo Drafthouse at Aspen Grove. I've just seen The Fabelmans, and here I am talking into a little video camera that I carry around in my pocket. This is kind of weird. Okay, The Fabelmans. Talk about an anticipated movie. We've got Steven Spielberg essentially making the Steven Spielberg story, a movie about a kid who grows up enraptured with the idea of making movies, growing up in the same time period as Spielberg, and whose family goes through a lot of the same things that I understand Spielberg's family did. And Spielberg acknowledges this is an autobiographical movie. If this were made by another filmmaker 20 years from now, it would simply be called the Steven Spielberg story. I think so, at least. I've talked about biopics before and how the biopics that work best as movies know when it's okay to deviate from the literal biography of a person if they're first and foremost trying to be good movies, and we should approach biopics in the same way. I think this approaches Steven Spielberg's story, and it's Steven Spielberg approaching his own story in the same way. It's a movie first and foremost, but he has a story he wants to tell, and that story is grounded in reality. So taking this as a movie, it is a very good movie. It's a movie, it's going to appeal to people who love movies, so I went in a sucker for this already, and it did not disappoint. It's got some extremely good performances. Gabriel Labelle as Sammy Fabelman, our protagonist, carries most of the movie, and he does a very good job of presenting a character who changes so much throughout the course of a movie. That's one of the problems with a coming-of-age story, is how much a character changes. Any good story is going to have a character changing, but to depict someone who's changing as much as people do from the time they are in, junior high to the time when they're college age, that's a remarkable amount of territory to cover as an actor. And Labelle does that very, very well. I also, though, want to acknowledge Mateo Zorian Francis DeFord. I think I got that name right. He plays young Sammy Fabelman. That's how we're introduced to the character initially. He's about 10 years old, and he's seeing his first movie. His parents are taking him to see The Greatest Show on Earth in a movie theater. And we get to see him being astonished and stunned by this movie. His parents aren't sure. Did he like this? Has he just been traumatized by it? And we're not sure really as an audience either. But, and it's in particular, it's the train crash scene in The Greatest Show on Earth that has this enormous impact on little Sammy. First, he wants to process that by getting toy trains and crashing them. And then, with his mom's prompting, he films that so he can watch it as many times as he needs. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. Some of the other performances: Michelle Williams as Mitzi Fabelman, his mother. Another very good performance. That's a tough performance because it's a character who has a lot of secrets, and portraying a character with secrets and giving you that vibe without revealing the secrets too early is a challenge. It's interesting to see, and I think that Williams does a good job with that. Paul Dano plays Bert Fabelman, Sam's father. And, initially I was thinking about Paul Dano's performance and the way I was reacting to it while watching the movie. I thought it was one of the weaker performances in the movie because it's so understated. It's so reserved. There's not a lot of emotion there. And I still think that to some extent. I think that it's not quite in sync with the other performances we see. But I have to give Dano a bit of slack there because the character he's playing is a reserved character, not an emotionless character, and he doesn't play it as an emotionless character. But compared to Mitzi, compared to Sam, Bert is a character who he's not overtly emotional, and yet he is affected by things, and we see emotional reactions to things. I could go on about a lot of the supporting performances. I didn't really see any that fell below par for this movie. I think they were all very strong. And it had that kind of tight-knit ensemble with the Fabelman family, and that includes some sisters. But there were plenty of other performances of people who affect the story, who affect Sam, and I think they were all very strong. Talking about the story, I started talking about this earlier, which is how young Sammy gets introduced to the idea of making movies by having this kind of traumatic experience watching something in a movie and then making his own movie version of it with his toy trains and his dad's Brownie movie camera to process that. And it's his mom who realizes this is part of it. This is why he's crashing his trains, is that he's trying to process what he saw in the movie. So why don't we encourage him to make a movie about it, and he doesn't have to keep crashing his trains? And that sets him on the path of wanting to continue to make movies, to start to explore the world and understand the world by converting it into movies. And there's a lot of fun scenes about that. He recruits his sisters and his friends into making these weird narrative home movies. At some point, we kind of see the transition of someone creating art for some purpose that they have, some psychological need that they have, and then they realize that they are making art, which doesn't diminish what they were doing before. It just gives them more ways to think about it, more ways to work with it, more things to learn, to apply to it. And we see Sam Fabelman go from being just a compulsive movie maker to someone who wants to create things for others and for more reasons as an artist. There's one section of the movie that I think could have been tightened up a little bit, could have been more concise, and that is the relatively long section towards the, definitely in the last third of the movie, which is Sam Fabelman in high school. He's in a new high school in California, which is where he's ended up as the family's moved around the country. He's an outsider in this California high school. He's Jewish, he's from the East Coast, he doesn't fit in, and a few people in this high school kind of target him for abuse. A lot of that is hard to watch. It's not gratuitous in any way. It definitely goes somewhere, and we see how it influences Sam and how it leads him to make friends and to meet people and to bring to this whole experience his art in making movies. So in the end, there's not a whole lot I would change about that, but it was probably the least pleasant to watch part of the movie. It wouldn't have lost anything with some edits there. This is a great movie for camera and tech nerds because we see Sam graduate across different cameras, and we get to kind of see the different home movie technology that is available. He starts with his dad's Brownie movie camera, and he graduates to like a Bolex, and then a Nikon Cine, and at one point he can borrow his girlfriend's Airflex camera. And to see we don't see a lot of him nerding out about technology, but we see enough to realize that the technology is part of the art and it's part of what fascinates him. Not because he just wants to dive into the technology, but because he has an understanding of how the different cameras and the different editing equipment, the different things at his disposal, are going to help him do what he loves to do better. Something about those early pictures that little Sammy Fabelman was taking with the Brownie camera, the first movie Sammy makes, and we get to see it as he's showing it to his mom. He sets up on his train table a recreation of the crash scene. He's got the train coming. He's got a little car on the tracks heading for the train. He's got, I believe it's a Noah's Ark toy across the tracks like the other train in that scene. And he crashes these together. And it's several different crashes. And he explains to his mom, I had to crash it a bunch of times to make it look right, but I'm not going to have to crash it anymore because I've got the movie. Obviously, it's clear. We see the kid get the developed film from the mail and start watching it. So it's not like he edited this movie. Any editing that was done is in-camera editing. And even if they were meticulous enough to show us what is in this movie, it's possible to have done with in-camera editing, shooting this shot, setting up another shot, and starting it right away to shoot that shot so you get the entire sequence as it was filmed in the camera. I can't believe that it was in-camera edited this well by a 10-year-old who had never used a movie camera before. And I'll cut movies slack for that kind of thing, but for a movie that is about movie making and a movie that shows the development of a movie maker, I kind of wish we had seen something a little more believable for Sammy's first movie. On the other hand, I can excuse that if I think of it this way. What we were seeing when he was showing his mom this movie he had made was the way that movie looked to little Sammy, the way it felt to him, what it meant to him. To him, this was a perfectly composed, perfectly shot, moodily lit, had a little bit of smoke effect from the train. To him, maybe it looked as good as it did to us seeing it on the screen. So I can use that excuse to enjoy that sequence, but it did take me out of the movie a little bit to watch that and say, no, a 10-year-old didn't make that in camera with a brownie. Putting aside the movie for a second, this really does, it makes me think about movie making technology and about filmmaking technology. I remember reading movie magazines, 30 years ago or more, and like indie movie magazines like Film Threat and some others. And so many of the ads were for indie movie making kits, essentially the camera and equipment that you would need to start making a movie. And the cheapest ones were thousands of dollars as the entry point for making movies. And it's astonishing, like I was saying in the introduction, we carry around cinema quality cameras on our phones, and I can imagine what a Sammy Fabelman would have done with this. It's fun to think about. It also reminds me, I'm talking about those cameras. My dad had a Kodak Brownie movie camera, just like the one that's shown in The Fabelmans. And I remember discovering this and kind of getting to play around with it. And I don't know that my brothers and I ever shot more than a roll of film on it. And I have no idea where that film is now. But that movie camera and just the idea, like, oh, this is a camera that can shoot movies. Yeah, they won't have sound or anything, but still. Far more than we ever did anything with the movie camera. I sat down and wrote probably a dozen different scenarios for movies that I wanted to see, that I wanted to make using this movie camera. We never got around to making them, but it got me to sit down and write them. So I think I owe that little movie camera a lot, even though I didn't use it to make a lot by way of movies. Other parts of this visit to the Alamo, the pre-roll. I was pleasantly surprised by this pre-show because the thing I expected was to see a whole lot about Steven Spielberg, a lot of trailers for Steven Spielberg movies. There's plenty of those to choose from. But instead, what we got most of in this pre-roll, this pre-show, were shorts of various kinds about movie making and movie projection. So we got like training films for movie projectionists. We got promotional films for movie cameras, little science instruction videos about how movies work and how the persistence of vision that humans have makes these still images appear to be moving and lifelike. We got information about the right way to edit movies, to splice film together, I mean, just the physical part of editing. So that was great. It really gave you a little more background to understand what Sam was talking about and what he was working with and what the equipment he had was. So I enjoyed that. And then towards the end of the pre-show, which runs about 30 minutes, then we started getting stuff about Steven Spielberg, some interviews, some bits about him not getting the Oscar nomination for Jaws, things like that. The fun clip that's from one of the Godzilla movies with two sailors on a U.S. Ship seeing a UFO, and one of them saying, well, you can tell your son about this, Spielberg. Just some fun things just to kind of lighten up the interesting but dry technical stuff we got about movie making. So a great pre-show for this particular movie. The food. I decided to try again the fish and chips. I had the fish and chips early in October at the Sloan's Lake Alamo, and I wasn't too impressed with them. They were a little underdone, not very flavorful, not impressed with those fish and chips. But I thought that seemed to be either the preparation or the cooking, so I would try it at a different Alamo, a different kitchen. And they were good. I enjoyed the fish and chips at Aspen Grove this time. So maybe Aspen Grove just has a better kitchen. The fish and chips were better this time. I've never had a problem with cold coffee at Aspen Grove the way I have at Sloan's Lake. So I'm going to make sure that if there's something that I thought was not quite as good as it should be at one location, I'll try it at a different location. I mean, thinking about it, there was that time when I had the chicken tenders at Aspen Grove and they were not very good. They were a little overdone. They were hard. So it's not like the Aspen Grove kitchen is perfect, but it's an interesting comparison. Heck, maybe I should try those chicken tenders at a different location. The rest of the visit, the staff, as always, were great. The Aspen Grove, still my favorite theater. It's very comfortable, very clean, good projection, good sound. So it was a good place in which to see the Fabelmans. And the auditorium this was an earlier show than I sometimes go to, and the auditorium was at least half full, so that's good to see. There's something interesting about being the only person in a movie theater, but it always does make me nervous if there are too many screenings where I'm the only person there, because I want the Alamo to stay in business. Well, thanks for watching. If you watched this far and you enjoyed this, please consider clicking like down below. It helps and it costs nothing. And I will be back with more reviews, so if you subscribe, you'll get additional Drafthouse Diaries. But most important, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be back with more reviews. And in the meantime, enjoy your movies. And when you do, stay till the end of the credits.